Why did it always feel heavier just before dawn? The silence wasn't empty. It pressed against her like a weight, thick, almost humming. Elena Marquez leaned her shoulder against the weathered wood of the outpost doorframe, hand resting on the edge as if steadying herself against something invisible. She wasn't tired. Not yet. But there was a weariness that came when you had no one left to talk to but your own thoughts. The outpost wasn't much. A skeleton of sandbags, a tower that groaned in the wind, tin roofs that rattled at night. Just another marker on a map someone in an office would probably never look at twice. But to her, it was everything. It was the thin line between a valley of villages and the armed men who wanted to erase them. And she was alone here. 3 days ago the others had rotated out. Orders, reassignment, the constant shuffle of a war that never seemed to have an end. They said relief would come by morning, a convoy, a fresh team. You'll only be holding it for a night, Marquez, 2 at most. That was 3 dawns ago. She had stopped marking the days on her sleeve. The radio wasn't silent, but it wasn't helpful either. Static mostly. Bursts of code words she couldn't quite piece together. No voices she knew, no promise of replacement. She had learned to stop hopping when the static cleared. But there was something else, something she hadn't told them, not command, not the soldiers she used to share coffee with in the mornings. She kept it tucked into her pocket, a folded slip of paper, a letter, written in her own hand but never sent. It wasn't for the army. It wasn't for anyone living, really. It was for her brother. Daniel Marquez had been 19 when he died in Kandahar. Too young, too reckless, and too certain the world couldn't break him. He had been wrong. She was the one who carried his name now, carved into her tags, etched into her memory. She still wrote to him. She told him about sunsets he would never see, about coffee gone cold before she could finish it, about the silence of nights like this one. She had no illusions. He wasn't listening, but the words still mattered. Her eyes scanned the horizon again. The desert didn't end here. It stretched forever. An ocean of dust and wind and thorn trees brittle as bone. The moon had already dropped low, the stars dimming like candles about to die. It was the worst moment of the night, when the sky decided it wasn't night anymore, but the sun wasn't ready to rise either. The in-between, the nothing. And then she heard it. Metal against rock. It wasn't much, a faint scrape, but in a place where nothing moved unless the wind forced it, the sound was everything. Her fingers tightened around the rifle leaning against the wall. Smooth, practiced motion. The stock nestled into her shoulder. Her breath slowed because her body knew what her mind hadn't caught up to yet. Someone was out there. She stepped into the watchtower, boots silent on the planks she had memorized. The scope lifted. She swept the ridge. Nothing. Sand, rock, empty horizon. Then there a shape just for a second. A shadow cut against the ridge, too still, too deliberate, waiting, watching. Her chest tightened. She wasn't just holding a rifle. She was holding the line. If this outpost fell, the valley below would be open. She remembered their faces. The boy with one shoe who laughed even as the dust stung his eyes. The woman who pressed warm bread into her hands and whispered a blessing she couldn't translate but still felt. Command would call it a loss of terrain. To her it would be names, people. She whispered to herself, "Not today, not while I'm breathing." Her instructors used to say patience won battles. Let them move first. Let them make the mistake. But patience was cruel when you were alone. Every second stretched. Every shift in the wind sounded like boots on gravel. She exhaled, counted, 1, 2, 3. The shadow didn't move. Her finger brushed the trigger guard. But then she paused. Something gnawed at her instincts. They weren't attacking, they weren't charging, they were just waiting. Why? She adjusted the focus. Nothing. Her mind whispered the question she didn't want to ask. What if they know she's alone? Her throat went dry. She had been so careful on the radio. Brief words, clipped tones, pretending there were still others at the outpost. She even left two helmets visible at the tower window to make the illusion. But what if they already knew? What if they were watching for her silence? For the first time in weeks, she felt fear. Not of dying, she had made peace with that long ago, but of failing, of losing the line, of being remembered only as the silence that gave way. Her brother's voice echoed in her head. You never let go, do you? Even as a kid. You always had to hold the line, even if it broke your hands. She adjusted her grip. She would hold. She had to. She swept the scope again. Nothing. The shadow was gone. Her breath caught. The desert had swallowed it whole. A chill moved through her chest. She wasn't watching anymore. She was being hunted. She pressed her back to the wall of the tower, forcing her breaths into silence. She had been trained for this. Alone, surrounded, outnumbered. Training always sounded cleaner than reality, though. Instructors never added the part where your heart wanted to pound through your ribs. She let her mind run through scenarios. A scout, a small unit. Maybe they were testing her, watching how quickly she reacted. Maybe they wanted her to fire first, reveal her position. She didn't move, didn't blink. The minutes stretched like hours. The wind shifted. Sand hissed across the walls. Her finger curled and uncurled against the trigger. And then another sound. Not on the ridge this time. Closer, at the base of the outpost. A shuffle, a whisper of fabric brushing stone. Her pulse spiked. How many? 2, 3, a whole squad. She steadied herself, leaned forward, listened. And then silence again. The kind that made her wonder if she had imagined it. Her mind told her to fire a warning shot. Her instincts told her not to. She stayed still. She thought of Daniel again, of the day they buried him. The flag folded too tight, pressed into her mother's shaking hands. She had sworn then that she wouldn't let silence swallow another name without a fight. Her chest rose, fell, rose again. She whispered it like a vow, not today. And the desert, as if it had heard, went still. But in the stillness, she knew, she wasn't the only one making promises tonight. Because somewhere out there, in the shadows beyond the ridge, someone else was waiting too. Why did the silence feel sharper after you convinced yourself you'd heard something? Elena crouched low in the tower, her back pressed against the cold wall. The wooden planks beneath her palms vibrated faintly with the restless wind. She had learned to read silences. There were kinds of quiet that meant peace and kinds that meant danger. This was the second kind. Her rifle lay across her knees, scope still angled toward the horizon. She hadn't fired. Not yet. Something inside her held her finger back. The figure on the ridge had vanished. The shuffle at the base of the outpost had dissolved into nothing. But absence was worse than presence, because absence meant intent. She pulled the radio closer, the green light blinking faintly. Static bled through the channel, the occasional stutter of code words too broken to be useful. Outpost Victor reporting, still holding, she whispered, disguising her voice with clipped authority. No contact confirmed, awaiting relief. It was theater, a performance. If someone was listening on the other end, they would believe she wasn't alone. But the silence that followed, just static, felt like mockery. She set it down again, fingers drumming softly against her thigh. Her gloves muffled the sound, but the rhythm betrayed her nerves. Her mind drifted. She hated when it did that, because silence left room for memory. She thought of Daniel again, the day before he deployed. She was 20 then, he was 19. They had sat on the roof of their mother's house, passing a bottle back and forth, pretending not to be afraid. He had joked about her stubbornness, about how she always argued even when she knew she was wrong. I'm not afraid of dying, he had said. I'm afraid of being forgotten. She hadn't known what to say to that. She still didn't. But now, sitting here alone, every shadow feeling like it had eyes, she wondered if this was what he felt. If fear wasn't about death at all, but about silence. A sound broke her thoughts. Not from outside, from inside. A metallic clink, subtle, deliberate. She froze. Her hand slid to the pistol at her hip. The rifle was too long for close quarters. Her breath slowed, eyes flicking across the dim interior of the outpost. The tower above creaked, wind maybe or not. Another clink. This time she recognized it. Metal against metal. Someone brushing a weapon against a beam, perhaps unintentionally. She stood, every muscle coiled tight. "Who's there?" Her voice was low, steady, commanding, but it echoed back at her in emptiness. She stepped toward the narrow stairwell, listened. The silence answered again. Her finger tightened on the pistol. And then nothing, no footsteps, no scrape, just the endless hollow wind. Her throat was dry. She forced herself to swallow. Was she losing it, hearing things that weren't there? She hated that thought because it was possible. 3 days alone in the desert could stretch reality thin. Every silence grew teeth. Every memory turned into a sound. But instincts didn't lie. She eased back toward the window, pistol still raised. Her mind split in two. One side cataloged threats, strategies, angles of defense. The other wandered where it shouldn't, back to the hospital where her brother's body had been flown. She remembered standing in the sterile hallway, the hum of fluorescent lights, the smell of antiseptic. Her mother had asked if she wanted to see him. She had said no. She had told herself it was strength, that she wanted to remember him alive. But the truth was simpler. She was afraid the silence would be too final. Another sound yanked her back. A whisper of fabric outside the wall. Close, very close. She dropped low, sliding to the sandbagged corner. The pistol was steady in her grip, though her heart was. She waited, counted the seconds. And then movement. A shadow slipped across the sand, quick, darting, too close to be a trick of light. She pressed the scope to her eye. This time she saw him. A man in dark cloth, crouched low, moving with the precision of someone trained to kill. His rifle slung, knife in hand. He wasn't scouting, he was stalking. Her pulse spiked, she steadied her breath. The crosshairs hovered. She could end it now, squeeze the trigger, stop him before he reached the wall. But her hand hesitated, because where there was one there were more, always more. Her finger brushed the trigger guard, trembling slightly. And then the man paused, his head turned, his eyes lifted toward her position. For a heartbeat, they locked across the distance. She fired. The crack tore through the silence, echoing off the barren hills. The man dropped soundlessly into the sand, his knife clattering against stone. The desert went still again. Her chest rose and fell, the echo of the shot ringing in her skull. Her ears buzzed with adrenaline. She scanned the ridge. Nothing moved. No return fire, no charge, just emptiness. But emptiness was worse. Because silence after a shot was never silence. It was decision. It meant someone else was out there, calculating, waiting to strike back. She whispered to herself, barely audible. First blood doesn't mean you win. It just means the game started. The minutes stretched. Her hands trembled once before she forced them still. And then slowly, the desert began to answer. Not with sound, with light. On the far ridge, a faint glimmer, a reflection, glass, scope. She dropped back into cover just as the first round struck the tower. Wood splintered, spraying her cheek. Another shot, closer, controlled. They weren't panicked, they were hunting. She pressed against the sandbags, pulse hammering. The outpost groaned under the impact. A third shot ripped through the tin roof, sending sparks as it struck a lantern. She closed her eyes for a second, inhaled, exhaled. This is it, she thought, this is the line. Her brother's voice rose again in her memory. You don't get to choose the fight, Elena. You only choose how long you hold it. Her hand steadied, her mind sharpened. She rolled, rifle raised, scope pressed against her eye. The ridge lit up with another flash. She tracked it, adjusted, fired. The shot echoed, a figure staggered, fell. but another flash answered from the left. She ducked, bullet tearing through the sandbag inches from her head. Her heart raced, but something inside her steadied. She wasn't afraid anymore, not in the way she had been minutes ago. This was her brother's war, carried into hers. His silence had become her vow. She whispered into the dust, "Not today, not while I'm breathing." And the desert, as if listening, gave no reply. Only the wind, only the hum of silence returning. But she knew it wasn't over. Because silence wasn't peace. Silence was only the pause before the next shot. How long could one heartbeat stretch? Elena lay flat against the sandbags, cheek pressed to the grit, her breath shallow. The air smelled of dust and gunpowder. The last shot had torn through the corner of the tower, leaving splinters still falling around her like tiny shards of glass. She hadn't moved for a full minute. The silence was suffocating. Her finger hovered along the trigger guard, rifle steady but unused. She didn't fire blind. That was how panic won. She let the wind carry the desert's voice. She waited for it to reveal the next sound. But the desert refused to speak. Her eyes burned from the scope. She blinked against the dryness, forcing herself to roll her shoulders, loosen her jaw. Tension was a slow killer. You didn't notice until it locked your body in place. The man she had shot lay still at the base of the ridge. She could see him through the scope now, lifeless, sprawled awkwardly with his arm outstretched as if still reaching for the knife. The wind tugged at his clothes, but he didn't move. He was her first kill at this outpost, but she knew he wouldn't be the last. Her lips moved before she realized it. Sorry. The word was a whisper, more to herself than to him. She pulled back from the scope, exhaled, and rested her head briefly against the cold metal of the rifle. The silence pressed heavier. And then came the smallest of sounds. A crack distant, the sharp bite of wood splitting. She ducked instinctively. A bullet tore through the edge of the tower, not aimed to kill, a test shot. They were probing her now, seeing if she would respond. Her chest rose and fell controlled as her mind worked. She could fight a battle of patience, but for how long? The outpost had enough supplies to last days. Food, water, ammo, she could hold it. In theory. But theory didn't account for exhaustion, for the weight of silence. The second shot came seconds later, closer, deliberate. She pressed her lips into a thin line. She remembered something her brother had told her before his last deployment. The waiting will break you faster than the bullets. He had been right. Her mind flicked to the letter in her pocket. Folded, creased, words written but unsent. She wanted to take it out, read it again. But she couldn't. Not now, not when every shadow could move. She stayed low, muscles tight, the sweat on her back chilling as the wind shifted. And then she heard it again. Not a shot this time, a voice. Faint, foreign. Carried by the wind from the ridge. She froze. It wasn't words she understood. The language was harsh, syllables cut sharp, but the tone was clear enough. They weren't whispering anymore. They wanted her to hear. A taunt. Her teeth clenched. She didn't answer. Another voice rose, louder, younger, laughing. Her throat tightened. She thought of Daniel again. The way he used to laugh, careless, fearless. The kind of laugh that didn't believe in endings. Hearing that sound from the ridge felt like a knife drawn slow across her chest. Her hand gripped the rifle tighter. Not today, she whispered again. The words had become her anchor, her vow. The voices faded. The desert went silent once more. She shifted her position, crawling along the tower floor to the far window. She needed angles, needed to see. The moon had dipped lower, stars faint, horizon beginning to pale. Dawn was coming. She hated dawn. It revealed everything, her silhouette, her weakness. Through the scope she scanned. Nothing. Her body ached from stillness. Her eyes begged for rest, but rest was a luxury. Her thoughts wandered again. Why had she volunteered for this posting? Why this outpost, forgotten by command, ignored by maps? Because she remembered the valley, the boy with one shoe, the woman with the bread, the laughter of children who shouldn't have known war but did anyway. She had promised herself she would not let silence fall on them. It wasn't duty anymore, it was personal. A faint sound jolted her back. The scrape of metal, this time behind the outpost. Her blood ran cold. She swung the scope. The desert behind her was supposed to be empty for miles, nothing but dust and stone. Yet there it was. Another figure crawling low, patient, almost invisible. Her breath stuttered. She adjusted, crosshairs steadying. The figure stopped, lifted his head. For a heartbeat, she saw his eyes through the scope. Young, too young. Her chest tightened, her finger hesitated. Was he 19, 20, the same age Daniel had been? Her throat closed, she blinked hard, the desert blurred. Not now, Elena, not now. She forced her breath even, in, out, in, out. The boy raised his rifle. Her finger squeezed. The crack split the dawn, the figure dropped. The silence returned. She exhaled, but it didn't feel like relief. She pressed her forehead to the rifle, her chest shaking once before she forced it still. Two bodies now, two shadows she would remember. The desert gave no comfort, only silence. She shifted back into cover, waiting for the next shot, the next sound. None came. For a moment the outpost was still. Her hands trembled, she forced them steady. Her brother's words echoed again. You don't get to choose the fight. You only choose how long you hold it. Her eyes closed, she whispered to the memory. I'll hold it, Daniel, as long as it takes. The wind brushed her cheek, dry and relentless. And just as the horizon began to glow faintly with the first light of dawn, she heard it again. A sound that froze her blood. Not a gunshot, not a voice. A whistle. Sharp, piercing. A signal. And she knew she wasn't holding the line against shadows anymore. They were coming. What was worse, the darkness that hid them or the light that revealed her? The whistle still hung in the air when Elena pressed her back to the wall, lungs locked tight. The sound had been sharp, deliberate, the kind of call that carried over sand and stone. She knew signals, she used them herself. Short, piercing, impossible to ignore. One sound meant many things. Rally, attack, advance. Her heart pounded so hard, she thought it might give her away. She slid the scope back to the ridge. Shapes moved now. Not shadows, not tricks of the wind men. Two, maybe three, crawling, darting, pausing. They weren't rushing. They weren't reckless. They were testing her. The horizon bled pale orange, dawn. The light touched her cheek as she adjusted her scope. She hated dawn. Darkness had been cover. Light made her visible. Her tower, her walls, her silhouette, all outlined for whoever stared back at her. A figure rose briefly on the ridge. She fired. The crack tore through the stillness. The man dropped. But another rose on the left, another on the right. She ducked as a bullet slammed into the sandbags, spraying grit into her eyes. She wiped them clear with her sleeve, squinting through the sting. 3 shots followed, controlled, deliberate. They weren't wasting ammunition. They were feeling out her defenses. Her pulse hammered. She rolled to the far window, sighting through the scope again. A man darted between thorn trees. She squeezed, missed. Dust exploded inches behind him. She bit down hard on her lip, taste of blood sharp. Stay steady, stay calm. Her body ached from hours without rest. Her eyes throbbed from staring through glass. Every muscle in her back protested the stillness, but she had no choice. The line had to hold. Another whistle, this one longer. Movement flared across the ridge. Shadows spilling down, she counted 4, no 5, maybe more. She pressed her chest flat to the sandbags lining up the scope. Her breath slowed, each inhale sharp with dust. She fired once, twice. A third time, one body fell, Another staggered, but the others kept coming. Bullets struck the tower. Tin screamed as holes ripped through the roof. Wood splintered, raining shards across her shoulders. She ducked, rolled, came up firing. The crack of her rifle answered the desert's thunder. Another man dropped. But they didn't stop. Her breath came faster now, her throat dry, her hands slick inside her gloves. The sun had broken the horizon. Light spilled across the sand, painting everything in harsh gold, and in that light she saw them clearer. Faces. Young. Too young. Her chest tightened. Daniel's face flickered in her mind, the same age, the same reckless certainty. She blinked hard, shook her head, forced the vision away. Not now, not here. She fired again. The bullet struck true. The boy dropped. Her stomach lurched. She whispered, "Sorry." But there was no time for grief. Another shot tore through the wall inches from her head. Splinters cut her cheek. Warm blood slid down her jaw. She gritted her teeth, shifted position, fired back. Her rifle clicked empty. She froze. Her hands moved fast, reloading, the magazine sliding in with a sharp snap. She exhaled, aimed again. But the ridge had gone still. She scanned left to right, nothing. Her breath came shallow, sweat dripped down her temple. And then laughter. Thin, cruel, carried by the wind. Her grip tightened on the rifle. They were playing with her, testing her endurance. They knew she was alone, or at least suspected. They were waiting for her mistakes. Her chest rose and fell. She forced her breath steady. The minutes stretched, silence again. She sat back against the wall, closing her eyes just for a second. And in that second, memory surged. Her brother again, that last night on the roof, his voice, his laugh, his hand passing the bottle. You never know when the fight you're in is your last, so you fight like every one of them matters. She opened her eyes, whispered into the dust, "I know, Daniel, I know." Her hands trembled, she pressed them still. The wind carried another sound. Different this time. A soft thud. Then another. Mortars. Her stomach dropped. She scrambled to the far window, eyes scanning the horizon. On the ridge, two men hunched low, setting tubes into the sand. Smoke curled as they dropped the first round. Her heart hammered. She dove for cover just as the first explosion ripped through the ground outside the outpost. The walls shook, dust cascading from the ceiling. Her ears rang, high-pitched, piercing. She pressed her body against the floor, mouth open to save her eardrums, chest rising in shallow gasps. The second round landed closer. The shockwave slammed against the tower, rattling every board, knocking a lantern from its hook. It shattered, flames licking across spilled fuel. She scrambled, stomping it out with her boot, coughing on smoke. Her lungs burned, her throat screamed. Another round whistled in. She dropped again, arms over her head. The blast struck the outer wall. Sandbags burst, sand spraying across her back. Her ears roared. Her chest heaved. She whispered through the chaos, "Not today, not while I'm breathing." The mortar fire stopped. Silence again. Her ears rang, her eyes watered. She coughed smoke, pressed a sleeve against her mouth. Through the haze she crawled back to the window, lifted the scope. The ridge was empty. Her stomach twisted. They weren't retreating, they were repositioning. And then her radio crackled. Her breath caught. Static first, then a voice. "Outpost Victor, do you copy? This is command, respond." Her throat closed. She snatched the receiver, pressed it to her lips. "Victor holding, under fire, multiple hostiles, request immediate support." The static answered. Then the voice again. "Relief convoy delayed, 48 hours, hold position." Her chest went hollow. 48 hours. 2 more days alone. Her hands trembled around the radio. Her throat ached. She wanted to scream, to curse, to beg, but the words wouldn't come. The silence pressed heavier. Finally she whispered, "Copy." The radio crackled once more, then died. She set it down slowly. Her eyes stung, her chest burned. 48 hours. Her lips moved, a whisper, a vow. Then I'll hold it, I'll hold it. She closed her eyes. And when she opened them, the desert was still waiting. How long could a body fight without sleep? Elena's eyes burned as the horizon shifted again. Light to dark, dark to light. Days folded into one another. She had lost count of the hours. The clock inside the tower still ticked, but she couldn't look at it anymore. The sound felt like mockery. Her hands trembled when she reloaded. Not from fear, she told herself, but from fatigue. Muscles that had been sharp now shook at the simplest motion. Every breath scraped her chest raw. Dust had made a home in her lungs. The desert was quiet, too quiet. After the mortar attack, the men had vanished. No more signals, no more shots, no more laughter. They had pulled back, but not gone, never gone. She could feel them like a shadow just beyond the flame, watching, waiting. She tried to rest. God, she tried. She pressed her back to the sandbags, closed her eyes, let her rifle lay across her lap. But her mind spun. Every time her head tilted, every time her breath slowed, she saw him. Her brother, Daniel. Sometimes standing, sometimes laughing, sometimes lying in that coffin, the flag draped across. And worse, sometimes she saw him in the crosshairs. She jolted awake, sweating, heart racing. She muttered into the emptiness, "You're not here, you're not." The desert didn't answer. Her stomach clawed at itself. The rations were gone. 2 days ago, maybe 3. She had stretched them too thin, counting every bite, every swallow. Now only water remained, warm and metallic from the tank. It coated her tongue but never eased the hunger. Her body ached with it. She shifted, pressed her eye to the scope again. Scanning, always scanning. Left ridge, right ridge, horizon, sky, sand. Over and over until the images blurred, blending into one smear of tan and shadow. And then movement. Her heart leapt, she froze, breath caught. But it wasn't a man. A dog. Thin ribs showing, limping across the sand. Its fur was matted, ears ragged. It stopped, sniffed the air, head jerking at every sound. Elena's throat tightened. She hadn't seen another living thing in days. The dog looked toward the outpost. For a moment, just a breath, she thought of calling it. She imagined the weight of fur against her palm, the sound of a heartbeat not her own, the warmth, the reminder that the world still held gentleness. But then it turned, limped away, vanished into the stone gullies. Her chest ached with the loss. She lowered the rifle, closed her eyes. And that was when the voices started. At first she thought it was the wind. Whispers carried across sand, rising and falling. She held still, ears straining. Her pulse raced. But then the whispers became clearer. Names. Her name. Elena. She jerked, spinning, rifle raised. Nothing there. Just the tower walls, the empty floor, the sandbags stacked like silent guards. She pressed her back to the wall, breath ragged. "You're tired, that's all, tired." But the voices didn't stop. Sometimes Daniel, sometimes her mother, sometimes voices of men she'd lost on other missions, men who had bled out in her arms, their last words etched into her bones. One voice lingered longer than the rest. It was Ramirez, the corporal who'd once laughed so hard at dinner he'd spilled water across the table. He had died on a convoy 3 years ago, a mine tearing through the lead truck. She had pulled his body from the wreck herself. Now his voice whispered from the corners of the tower. "Don't let go, Elena, don't let go." Her eyes burned. She whispered back, "I'm trying." Her hands shook harder now. She pressed them flat against the sandbags, grounding herself in the grit. And then the shot came. Sharp, close. Splinters ripped from the wall inches from her face. She dropped low, rifle snapping to her shoulder. She searched the horizon through the scope. There a flicker, a muzzle flash. She fired back once, twice. Dust burst near the ridge. She saw a figure drop. Another moved to the right. She fired again. But she was slower now, less precise. The bullet missed wide. A shot tore through the corner of the tower, grazing her shoulder. Pain flared hot, white. She gasped, staggered back, clutching the wound. Blood seeped warm through her sleeve. Her legs buckled. She pressed against the wall, teeth clenched, vision swimming. Her mind screamed, "You can't stop now." She forced herself upright, pressed the scope to her eye, searching again. But the ridge was empty. The silence returned. Her shoulder throbbed. Every pulse was a drumbeat of pain. She tore fabric from her undershirt, wrapped it tight, tied it with shaking hands. Her throat trembled as she whispered, "Not yet, not yet." She leaned her head back against the sandbags, eyes closing. For a moment the world tilted, colors bending, sounds warping. She thought she saw Daniel again, smiling this time. "You're doing good," he said, "better than me." She wanted to answer, but when she opened her eyes, he was gone. The tower stood silent, the desert breathed. She swallowed hard, blinking against tears. The hours dragged. She forced herself to patrol every corner of the tower, rifle in hand, scanning, listening. The voices faded, but the silence was worse. By nightfall, her body felt like stone. She sank against the sandbags, rifle across her chest, eyes fluttering shut despite herself. Dreams came, vivid. Her brother on the roof again, but this time the bottle wasn't in his hand. It was a letter. He held it out to her. His lips moved, but no sound came. She reached for the letter. Her fingers brushed it. A crack jolted her awake. She snapped up, rifle ready. Her heart raced. But it wasn't a shot. It was the outpost gate. Metal groaning. Her chest froze. Someone was inside. She pressed her back to the wall, rifle raised, breath held. The sound came again. Slow, deliberate. Her finger tightened on the trigger. The tower floor creaked beneath her boots as she edged to the stairwell. Another groan, another scrape. And then silence. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She waited, seconds dragging like hours. Then a footstep. Inside the outpost. What if the enemy was already inside? Elena held her breath as she slid one boot across the tower floor, every plank beneath her aching with sound. The stairwell gaped below her like the throat of a beast. She kept the rifle tight to her shoulder, barrel aimed into the dark. Another footstep. Slow, soft, a shuffle across stone. Her pulse pounded so hard she thought it might shake the rifle from her hands. She pressed her back to the wall, listening. The silence stretched, heavy as chains. She moved, one step at a time, lowering herself down the stairs, rifle ready. Her shoulder screamed with pain at every shift, the blood-soaked bandage tightening against torn skin. She ignored it. At the base of the tower, she paused. The air smelled different, smoke faint but sharp, not from fire, from clothes, from breath. Someone was here. Her throat went dry. She raised the rifle higher, finger against the trigger. The outpost stretched before her, walls of sandbags, crates stacked, shadows crouched in corners. She whispered, barely sound, "Who's there?" No answer. She took another step, sweeping her rifle across the room. And then she saw it. A shadow moving. Her breath caught, she froze. The shape bent low near the gate, hands working at something, metal scraping. Enemy. Her finger tightened. But then the figure turned. A face. Not a man. A boy. Her breath stopped. He couldn't have been older than 15. Clothes torn, hair matted, eyes wide with hunger and fear. His hands gripped the wire of the gate, trying to pry it open. Elena's throat closed. She steadied her rifle, whisper sharp, "Stop." The boy froze. His eyes locked on hers, brown, deep, desperate. He lifted his hand slowly, empty. Her mind spun. A child alone here, how? Her lips trembled. "You shouldn't be here." He didn't answer, didn't speak her language maybe. He took a small step back, hands still raised. His chest rose and fell, ragged with fear. Elena's heart cracked. She saw Daniel again, not in uniform, not on the roof, but younger, the boy he had been before the war stole his years, laughing, running across the yard with scraped knees and dirt on his face. Her rifle lowered an inch. "Go," she whispered. The boy hesitated. His eyes flicked to the crates, to the water tank, to the rifle in her hands. She realized then, he wasn't here to fight, he was here to survive. Her throat tightened. She gestured toward the gate. "Go." He shook his head, his lips parted, a single word. "Water." Her chest ached. The bottle by her boot was nearly empty. Her own lips cracked, throat raw, every swallow a struggle, but the boy's eyes burned with the same thirst. She bent, picked it up, held it out. His eyes widened. He stepped closer, slow, like approaching an animal that might bolt. His hands trembled as he reached. Their fingers brushed. For a moment, just one, Elena felt something human break through the silence. The boy lifted the bottle, drank greedily, water spilling down his chin. He gasped, wiped his mouth, whispered something she couldn't understand. A thank you, maybe. Her eyes stung. But then another sound. From outside. A whistle. Her blood went cold. The boy froze too, his head turned toward the ridge, his body tensed. He wasn't alone. Elena's heart slammed. She snapped the rifle up again, eyes narrowing. The boy saw. His eyes widened with panic. He shook his head fast, stepping back, hands raised again. Elena whispered hard, "Who's out there?" He didn't answer. His chest heaved. His eyes darted between her and the gate. Another whistle, closer this time. Her skin prickled. The boy dropped the bottle, water spilling across the dirt. He ran. Through the gate into the desert, gone. Elena stood frozen, rifle shaking in her hands. Her breath came hard, fast. Her chest burned. She wanted to call him back, to drag him inside, to save him. But she couldn't. The whistles grew louder. She staggered back into the tower, slamming the door, dragging crates across it. Her hands shook. Her shoulders screamed. Sweat dripped into her eyes. Through the window, she scanned the ridge. Movement again, shadows rising more than before. 10, maybe 12. Her stomach dropped. The boy had been bait, or a distraction. Her throat closed. She whispered, "God forgive me." The figures advanced, slow, deliberate. Rifles glinted in the dawn light. Elena pressed her cheek to the scope, breath steadying despite the panic clawing inside her. She fired once, twice, 3 times. 2 men dropped, the others scattered. Bullets cracked against the tower, wood splintered, stone chipped. She ducked, rolled, came up firing again. Her rifle answered the desert's roar. Another fell. But they kept coming. Her body screamed with exhaustion. Her shoulder throbbed, blood soaking through bandages. Her vision blurred with hunger, but still she fired. Her lips moved with each shot, a whisper, a vow. For Daniel. A bullet tore through the sandbags, grazing her arm. She hissed, shifted, fired back. Dust swallowed the ridge. And then silence again. The men vanished. Her breath came ragged, her body trembled. She sank back against the wall, rifle across her knees. Her chest heaved, her vision swam. The boy's face haunted her, his eyes, his thirst, the sound of water dripping into dust. She pressed her hands over her face, whisper breaking, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. The desert didn't answer. Only the wind, only the silence, and the waiting. How much guilt can one heart hold before it breaks? Elena hadn't moved for hours. She sat with her back to the sandbags, rifle resting across her lap, blood dried stiff on her sleeve. Her eyes stayed fixed on the gate where the boy had slipped away. Every creak of the tower, every sigh of wind felt like his shadow. She could still see the water spilling into the dust, vanishing before it ever sank in. She could still feel the touch of his trembling hands. She could still hear his voice, one word, a plea. Water. Her lips cracked as she whispered it again. Water. It tasted like ash in her mouth. Her chest rose and fell, shallow, each breath clawing. Hunger had eaten through her strength. Thirst had burned through her resolve. The wound on her shoulder pulsed with heat, infection creeping in, sweat slicking her forehead even as the desert cooled. But worse than the pain was the silence. She no longer trusted it. Every time the desert fell still, something followed. Whistles, shots, shadows. This silence was thicker, heavy. It pressed against her skin like a hand. Her finger twitched against the trigger guard. The boy had been a test. They knew she was still here now. Not a ghost, not a myth, a woman, alone. And they would come. The thought should have crushed her. Instead, it steadied her. She reached for the photo tucked inside her vest pocket. The edges were worn soft, the image fatting. Daniel, younger, grinning, arms slung around her shoulder. They were standing on the porch of their childhood home, the world still simple, still whole. She stared at it, voice trembling. I won't let go, Danny, not of this, not of you. The wind shifted, carried something with it. A sound. Engines. Her head snapped up. She scrambled to the scope, pressed her eye against the glass, breath caught. Far on the horizon, dust rising. Not a storm, not the wind, vehicles. Her heart dropped. Trucks, 2, maybe 3, headed straight for the outpost. Her chest tightened. This wasn't a test anymore. This was the end. Her hands shook as she reloaded, checked her last magazines. She counted, too few, far too few. She whispered numbers under her breath. 27, 28, 29. That was it. Her chest hollowed. But there was no one else. No relief convoy yet. No command, no backup, no other line. Only her. Her lips moved with the words before she realized. So I'll be the line. She dragged crates tighter against the windows, reinforced sandbags, pulled every scrap of cover she could. Her body screamed with every motion, shoulder tearing, legs trembling, vision swimming. But she worked anyway. Because work kept her alive. The engines grew louder. Through the scope she saw them clearer now. Open trucks, armed men in the back, faces hard, rifles gleaming. 20, maybe more. Her throat closed. Her finger brushed the trigger. She waited until the first truck came within range. Then she fired. The first man dropped, the truck swerved, shouts filled the air. She fired again, another man fell. Bullets answered, slamming into the tower, rattling wood, splitting stone. She ducked, rolled, fired again from the other window. The trucks pushed closer. Her scope shook with every shot, her vision blurring, breath ragged. But still she hit, still she fought. One truck veered off, smoke billowing from a tire. Another kept coming, closer, closer. Bullets tore through the outpost walls, splinters slicing her cheek. She pressed harder into the rifle, lips moving without sound. A prayer, a vow, maybe both. For Daniel, for me. She fired until the magazine clicked empty. Reload, fire again. The first truck reached the gate. Men leapt off, shouting, rifles raised. Her heart hammered. She dropped 2 before they hit the ground. But more followed. They surged at the walls, boots slamming against metal, hands clawing at the gate. The tower shook with the impact. Elena fired down, bullets raining. Men fell back, some clutching wounds, others dragging them away, but more filled the space, always more. Her rifle kicked, her shoulder burned, her lungs screamed for air. She fired until her hands were numb. Then silence. Her rifle empty. She dropped it, pulled the sidearm from her thigh, a smaller weapon, lighter, not enough, but it was all she had. The men regrouped outside the gate. Shouts echoed, commands barked. She couldn't hear the words, but she knew the tone. They were preparing to breach. Her chest rose and fell, sharp, fast. She pressed her back to the wall, gun in her lap, eyes closed. And for a moment, just a moment, she let herself imagine Daniel standing there. Not in a coffin, not in memory, but beside her, rifle in his hands, that grin on his face. "We'll hold it," he said in her mind. "We always hold it." Her lips curved, trembling. "Yeah," she whispered, "we hold it." The gate screamed. Metal tearing. Her eyes snapped open. She raised the pistol, breath steadying. The silence shattered. The final fight had come. How long could one person hold back a storm? The gate screamed as men rammed against it, the metal buckling with each strike. Elena stood at the top of the tower, pistol steady, chest rising and falling in sharp, ragged pulls. Her ears rang from the gunfire. Her vision swam with heat and exhaustion, but her grip never wavered. Every breath was a choice, every second a victory. The first breach came with a crack. The gate bent inward, light slicing through. A hand reached inside, fumbling at the lock. Elena fired. The man dropped. Another took his place. Her pistol barked again, the recoil jolting her tired arm. The second man fell. The shouting outside grew louder, angrier. Boots stomped, wood splintered. Elena reloaded, her last magazine sliding into place with a metallic click. She counted without speaking. 10 rounds, no more. Her chest tightened. 10 breaths, 10 chances. She steadied herself. The gate burst open. Men surged through, rifles raised, voices sharp with command. Dust and sunlight spilled across the outpost floor. Elena fired. One dropped, two. She moved like instinct, like memory, like every lesson drilled into her body through years of training. She ducked behind sandbags, popped up, fired again. Another fell. Her pistol clicked empty. She threw the magazine aside, slammed in the last one. 6 left. The men spread out now, moving with caution, firing into the tower. Bullets ripped through wood and stone, dust choking the air. Elena dropped low, heart hammering, sweat dripping down her temple. She coughed, pressed her back to the wall, whispered to herself. "You hold it, you hold it." Her mind filled with Daniel again, his grin, his voice. "We always hold it." Her lips curved, trembling. She rose, fired again. Another man staggered, fell. 5 left. The air filled with smoke, dust, shouts. Her shoulder burned, her legs shook, her lungs screamed. But still she fought. 4, 3, 2. Her pistol clicked empty again. Silence. She froze, breath sharp, heart pounding. No magazines left, no rifle rounds, nothing. Her chest hollowed. The last man stepped forward, tall, rifle steady, eyes cold. Elena met his gaze. Her lips moved with the words, "You're not taking this." She reached for the last weapon she had. A knife, small, worn but sharp. Her hand gripped it tight. The man raised his rifle. And then engines. Loud, close. Her head snapped toward the horizon. Through the dust, trucks, but not theirs. Relief convoy. Her chest stuttered. The enemy soldier turned his head, distracted. Elena moved. Knife flashing, body slamming forward with the last of her strength. The blade struck true. The man gasped, staggered, fell. Her breath came ragged, her body trembling. She collapsed against the wall, chest heaving, knife slipping from her fingers. Outside, the enemy scattered. Trucks roared, soldiers shouting, rifles cracking. The relief convoy had come. Elena sat slumped, vision blurring, ears ringing. The tower shook with gunfire and engines and chaos. But all she heard was silence. Inside her. Calm. She reached into her vest, pulled out the photo. Daniel's face grinning, frozen in time. She pressed it to her chest, whispered, "We held it, Danny, we held it." Her eyes closed. The noise outside faded. And in that fading there was peace. When the convoy soldiers broke into the tower, they found her there. Head resting against the wall, photo clutched in her hand, the knife on the ground, the pistol empty, the line still held. They stood in silence, hats low, rifles quiet. Because some victories aren't loud. They don't come with banners or trumpets. They come with one person's refusal to let go. Later, when the story was told, it spread quiet at first. A whisper, then a memory, then a lesson. Of the woman who waited at the outpost alone. Who became the line between life and loss. And who never broke. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.